Welcome to the non-dual lectionary for the ninth Sunday after Pentecost, year A, and we're continuing with Matthew. We've got some more parables, so let's take a look. It is Matthew chapter 13, verses 31 to 32 and 44 to 52. He told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man took and planted in his field. Though it is the smallest of all seeds, yet when it grows, it is the largest of garden plants and becomes a tree, so that the birds come and perch in its branches. The kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field. When a man found it, he hid it again, and then in his joy went and sold all he had and bought that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant looking for fine pearls. When he found one of great value, he went away and sold everything he had and bought it. Once again, the kingdom of heaven is like a net that was let down into the lake and caught all kinds of fish. When it was full, the fishermen pulled it up on the shore. Then they sat down and collected the good fish in baskets, but threw the bad away. This is how it will be at the end of the age. The angels will come and separate the wicked from the righteous and throw them into the blazing furnace, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Have you understood all these things? Jesus asked. Yes, they replied. He said to them, therefore, every teacher of the law who has become a disciple in the kingdom of heaven is like the owner of a house who brings out of his storeroom new treasures as well as old. So, good parables, I think. There's one part that to me strikes as tricky, but I think maybe rich, but just a little bit on each. And these are, I think, ones where we kind of get it right in even the traditional sense of things, right? So, the mustard seed that, it's the smallest and yet it grows. Um, there's all sorts of ways that we can see that from as indicative of the spiritual journey, or that the from everything from the still small voice, right, to just the sense of mm, something like flourishing, right, like if even if we don't think of like spiritual and meditative wise, but like in the non-dual, like big sense, right, of hey, things, you know reality, the universe, God, whatever you want to name it, like flourishes in big ways and surprising ways, and we participate in that. um we always participate in that, right? But we can kind of step into it and participate when we recognize true nature, right? Because we already are, and then when we recognize it, it's like that stepping in, so that we're kind of part of it in that way. The two next ones, I think, go together real nice, and it's just, that again, we can draw that sort of, when the there can be a thing about the seeker, right? Like the single pointedness idea, right? Or when you found um, what's truly valuable, right? The relative significance of other things can fall away in a way that that can seem very dualistic in a way, right? Um, but but just that single-mindedness, that single pointedness of the clarity that can shine through, right? So this is what's truly valuable, and in the sense of like, yes, I'll continue to do anything, and all things still appear and exist, um, but it kind of restructures in a way, right? The way in which I manifest in the world. Um, the parable of the net. Here's the tricky one to me, right? Because we've got that apocalyptic interpretation right after. So I think we can say two things about this. The first is ignore the apocalyptic part again, right? So the apocryphal gospel of Thomas has the same parable but slightly differently and without the apocalyptic part at the end. And in that, we've got the idea of the net that brings everything in, right? And then collect the good and throw the bad away, sure, but the just that first part of like collecting everything in, right? It all comes in, and then the sense of like knowing what's valuable. We can kind of go back to that first part again, right? Of it doesn't have to be throwing the bad away in the sense of like it's it's literal trash, right? Or but just, everything comes in, and yet at the same time we still, recognize and focus on or put our attention on, whatever it is that, that pearl of great price, right? Or that really animating, true, beautiful thing that we stumble upon sometimes along the way. But the second thing we can say is including that apocalyptic stuff, I think, which is, what one of the things about apocalyptic stories or parables in this sense is um, the sense of like a hidden thing that we actually want, right? Uh, like there's a part of us that actually wants, everything to be burned down, right? The wicked to be thrown into the blazing furnace and um, everything to be destroyed. Uh, and we easily kind of put the wicked over there and the righteous here, right? But I think a more interesting thing is like the sense that like we recognize that we are wicked, and it doesn't have to be sinful or anything, but we recognize like um that the way I manifest in the world isn't perfect. um, Especially when we're still living out of ego sense, right? There's this precariousness of the ego, right, where it recognizes that it's not whole. And so when we talk about separating the wicked from the righteous, the ego might always says, "Well, I'm in the righteous group," but secretly kind of knows it's in the wicked group, right? Um, and so then the idea of like it's going to be blasted in the furnace and weeping and gnashing of teeth and everything will be destroyed that I think is important to me and all that, like that's like there's something cool there about like the flip side of not necessarily this pure devotional thing of the first of the pearl or the field, right? Not necessarily the single-mindedness of like, oh, I can separate the good and I can follow that, but like what, like burn away, like a secret desire to burn off everything that falls short, right? Everything that's less than love, everything that's less than true nature. I want it burned off secretly, right? And so a parable like this like gets right at it, and says, there it is. Here we are. Let's burn it all off. Let's do it, right? Um, and then what would be left? And here, the righteous is left, but it can be just my true nature would be left if everything else was gone, right? If everything and all the things I cling on to would be burned off too. And there's like even a secret desire for that to happen. So, that's always something that I think comes up in an apocalyptic story like that. And then just, to finish it off, right? The last thing here, every teacher of the law, who's become a disciple in the kingdom is like the owner who brings out of his storeroom new treasures as well as old. And that I think is just a beautiful little thing right there, right? Like, um, the idea that like we're not just repeating the things that have come before, right? But there's like the bleeding edge. There's like the new treasures of what's to come. Um, it reminds me of Jesus pointing to, the disciples and saying, "You'll do these things and greater than me," right? Is, the every so every teacher of the law who really, teacher of the law here, every person who's bought into the mythology and is doing the right thing, but then goes into the kingdom of heaven, right? Discovers true nature, who really manifests that in the world, they'll do better than the law, right? They'll bring out something new as well, because that's just a description of what is when what is manifesting through you and me and everything else in the world.